Hello, baby. Welcome back. I just want you to know that I love you very, very much, and reading these stories to you makes me very, very happy. This is Chapter 2, Chronicles of Prydain, The Mask of the King. Henwed had vanished. Ahead, Taran heard a thrashing amongst the leaves. The pig, he was sure, was keeping out of sight in the bushes. Following the sound, he ran forward. After a time, the ground rose sharply, forcing him to clamber on hands and knees up a wooded slope. At the crest, the forest broke off before a meadow. Taran caught glimpse of Henwen dashing into waving grass. Once across the meadow, she disappeared beyond a strand of trees. Taran hurried after her. This was farther than he had ever dared venture, but he struggled on through the heavy undergrowth. Soon a fairly wide trail opened, allowing him to quicken his pace. Henwen had either stopped running or had outdistanced him. He heard nothing but his own footsteps. He followed the trail for a while, intending to use it as a landmark on the way back. Although it twisted and branched off so frequently, he was not at all certain in which way Caerdalben lay. In the meadow, Taran had been flushed and perspiring. Now he shivered in the silence of the oaks and elms. The woods here were not thick, but the shadows drenched the high tree trunks and the sun broke only through the jagged streaks. A damp green scent filled the air. No birds called, no squirrels chattered. The forest seemed to be holding its breath. Yet there, beneath the silence, a groaning restlessness and a trembling amongst the leaves. The branches twisted and grated against each other like broken teeth. The path wandered underneath Taran's feet, and he felt desperately cold. He flung his arms around himself and moved more quickly to shake off the chill. He was, he realized, running aimlessly. He could not keep his mind on the forks and turns of the path. He halted suddenly. Hoofbeats thudded in front of him. The forest shook as they grew louder. In another moment, a black horse burst into view. Taran fell back terrified. Astride the foam-spattered animal strode a monstrous figure. A crimson-cloaked flame his naked shoulders. Crimson stained his gigantic arms. Horror-stricken, Taran saw not the head of a man, but the antlered head of a stag. The Horned King. Taran flung himself against an oak to escape the flying hooves and heaving, glistening flanks. Horse and rider swept by. The mask was a human skull. From it the great antlers rose in cruel curves. The Horned King's eyes blazed behind the gaping sockets of widened bone. Many horsemen galloped in his train. The Horned King uttered the long cry of a wild beast, and his riders took it up as they streamed after him. One of them, an ugly, grinning warrior, caught sight of Taran. He turned his mount and drew a sword. Taran sprang from the tree and plunged into the underbrush. The blade followed, hissing like an adder. Taran felt it sting across his back. He ran blindly while saplings whipped his face. Hidden rocks jutted out to pitch him forward, stabbing at his knees. Where the woods thinned, Taran clattered along a dry stream bed until, exhausted, he stumbled and held out his hands against the whirling ground. The sun had already dipped westward when Taran opened his eyes. He was lying on a stretch of turf with a cloak thrown over him. One shoulder smarted painfully. A man knelt beside him. Nearby, a white horse cropped the grass. Still dazed, fearful the riders had overtaken him, Taran stood up. The man held out a flask. "Drink," he said. "Your strength will return in a moment." The stranger had a shaggy, gray-streaked hair of a wolf. His eyes were deep-set, flecked with green. Sun and wind leathered his broad face, burnt it dark, and grained it with fine lines. His cloak was coarse and travel-stained. A wide belt with intricately wrought buckle encircled the waist. "Drink," the stranger said again, while Taran took the flask dubiously. You look as though I were trying to poison you," he smiled. "It is not that Gwydion, son of Dawn, deals with the wounded." "Gwydion?" Taran choked on the liquid and stumbled to his feet. "You are not Gwydion," he cried. "I know of him. He is a great war leader, a hero. He is not—" His eyes fell on the long sword at the stranger's belt. The golden pommel was smooth and rounded, its color deliberately muted. Ash leaves of pale gold entwined the hilt. A pattern of leaves covered the scabbard. It was truly the weapon of a prince. Taran dropped to one knee and bowed his head. "Lord Gwydion," he said, I did not mean or intend such insolence." As Gwydion helped him rise, Taran still stared in disbelief at the simple attire and the worn, lined face. From all Dalben had told him of the glorious hero, from all he had pictured to himself, Taran bit his lip. Gwydion caught Taran's look of disappointment. "It is not the trappings that make the prince," he said gently, "nor, indeed, the sword that makes the warrior. Come," he ordered, "tell me your name and what happened to you. And do not ask me to believe you got a sword wound picking gooseberries or poaching hares." "Well, I saw the Horned King," Taran burst out. "His men riot in the forest. One of them tried to kill me. I saw the Horned King himself. It was horrible, worse than Dalben told me." Gwydion's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Who are you to speak of Dalben?" "I am Taran of Caer Dalben," Taran answered, trying to appear bold but succeeding only in turning paler than a mushroom. "Of Caer Dalben?" Gwydion paused an instant and gave Taran a strange glance. "And what are you doing so far from there? Does Dalben know that you were in the forest? Is Cole with you?" Taran's jaw dropped, and he looked so thunderstruck that Gwydion threw his head back and burst into laughter. "You need not be so surprised," Gwydion said. "I know Cole and Dalben well, and they are too wise to let you wander here alone." "Have you run off, then? I warn you, Dalben is not one to be disobeyed." "It was Henwen," Taran protested. "I should have known I couldn't hold on to her. Now she's gone, and it's my fault. I'm an assistant pig keeper." Gone." Gwydion's face tightened. "Where and what has happened to her?" "I do not know," Taran cried. Somewhere in this forest, as he poured out the account of this morning's events, Gwydion listened intently. "I had not foreseen this," Gwydion murmured, when Taran had finished. "My mission fails if she is not found quickly." He turned abruptly to Taran. "Yes," he said, "I too seek Henwen." "You?" cried Taran. "You came this far?" "I need information that she alone possesses," Gwydion said quickly. "I have journeyed a month from Caer Dafil to get it, and I have been followed, spied on, hunted, and now," he added with a bitter laugh, "she has run off." "Very well, she will be found. I must discover all she knows of the Horned King." Gwydion hesitated. "I fear he himself searches for her even now." "It must be so," he continued. "Henwen sensed him near Caer Dalben, and that's why she fled in terror." "Then we should stop him," Taran declared. "Attack him, strike him down. Give me a sword and I will stand with you." "Gently, gently," chided Gwydion. "I do not say that my life is worth more than another man's, but I do prize it highly. Do you think a lone warrior and one assistant pig keeper dare attack the Horned King and his warrior band?" Taran drew himself up. "I would not fear him." "No?" said Gwydion. "Then you are a fool. He is a man most to be dreaded in all of Prydain. Will you hear something I learned during my journey, something even Dalben may not yet realize?" Gwydion knelt on the turf. "Do you know the craft of weaving? Thread by thread the pattern forms." As he spoke, he plucked at the long blades of grass, knotting them and forming a mesh. "That is cleverly done," said Taran, watching Gwydion's rapidly moving fingers. "May I look at it?" "There is more serious weaving," said Gwydion, slipping the net into his own jacket. "You have seen one thread of a pattern loomed into a leuven. A Ron does not long abandon a leuven," Gwydion continued, "but his hand reaches everywhere. There are chieftains whose lust for power goads them like a sword point. To certain of them a Ron promises wealth and dominion, playing on their greed as a bard plays on a harp. A Ron's corruption burns every human feeling from their hearts, and they become his liegemen, serving him beyond the borders of a leuven, and bound to him forever." "And the Horned King?" Gwydion nodded. "Yes, I know beyond question that he was sworn his allegiance to a Ron. He is a Ron's sworn champion. Once again, power of a leuven threatens Prydain." Taran could only stare, speechless. Gwydion turned to him. "When the time is ripe, the Horned King and I will meet, and one of us will die. That is my oath. But his purpose is dark and unknown, and I must learn it from Henwen." "She can't be far," Taran cried. "I'll show you where she disappeared, and I think I can find that place if it was just before the Horned King." Gwydion gave him a hard smile. "Do you have the eyes of an owl to find a trail at nightfall? We sleep here, and I shall be off at first light. With good luck, I may have her back before—" "What of me?" Taran interrupted. "Henwen is my charge. I let her escape, and it is I who must find her." "The task counts more than the one who does it," said Gwydion. "I will not be hindered by an assistant pig-keeper, who seems eager to bring himself to grief." He stopped short and looked wryly at Taran. "On second thought, it appears I will. If the Horn King rides towards Cair Dalben, I cannot send you back alone, and I dare not go with you and lose a day's tracking. You cannot stay in the forest by yourself, unless I find some other way." "I swear I will not hinder you," cried Taran. "Let me go with you to Dalben, and Cole will see what I can do." "Have I another choice?" said Gwydion. "It would seem, Taran of Cair Dalben, we follow the same path, for a little while at least." The white horse trotted up and nuzzled Gwydion's hand. "Melwingar reminds me it is time for food. Gwydion," he unpacked provisions from the saddlebags. "Make no fire tonight," he warned. "The Horn King's outriders may be close at hand." Taran swallowed a hurried meal. Excitement robbed him of his appetite, and he was impatient for dawn. His wound had stiffened so that he could not settle himself on the roots and pebbles. It had never occurred to him until now that a hero would have to sleep on the ground. Gwydion, watchful, sat on his knees, drawn up, his back against the enormous elm. In the lowering dusk, Taran could barely distinguish the man from the tree, and could have walked a pace with it before him without even realizing he was more than just a splotch of a shadow. Gwydion had sunk into the forest itself. Only his green-flecked eyes shone in the reflection of the newly risen moon. Gwydion was silent and thoughtful for a long while. "So, you are Taran of Cair Dalben," he said at last. His voice from the shadows was quiet but urgent. "How long have you been with Dalben? And who are your kinsmen?" Taran hunched against the tree root, pulled his cloak closer over his shoulders. "I have always lived at Cair Dalben," he said. "I don't think I have any kinsmen. I don't know who my parents were. Dalben has never told me. I suppose," he added, turning his face away, "I don't even know who I am." "In a way," answered Gwydion, "that is something we all must discover for ourselves. Our meeting was fortunate," he went on. "Thanks to you, I know a little more than I did, and you have spared me a wasted journey all the way to Cair Dalben. It does make me wonder," Gwydion went on, with a laugh that was not unkind, "is there a destiny laid on that an assistant pig-keeper should help me in my quest?" He hesitated. Or, he mused, is it perhaps the other way around? "What do you mean?" Taran asked. "I'm not so sure," said Gwydion. "It makes no difference now. Sleep now, for we rise early in the morning." I love you, baby girl.